In the Catholic Church, there are two important divisions between the ways a person can act against God's will. The first one, venial sin, weakens charity in the souls of sinners, but does not completely destroy it. The second way, mortal sin, completely destroys the link between God and the sinner. These distinctions can be likened to a friendship with God. A venial sin might be similar to insulting another person and damaging our relationship with them, while mortal sin is like a personal offense against that friend, one which can actually end the friendship. In this light, it is important to distinguish whether you've committed venial or mortal sin, because it will dramatically affect your spiritual life. What qualifies something as mortal sin? There are three conditions that must be met for a sin to be considered mortal. Firstly, the sin must be grave matter. It must be done with full knowledge, and it must be done deliberately, with the consent of the sinner. The first requirement about grave matter is a little vague, but the Catechism gives some directives in number 1858. Grave matter is specified by the Ten Commandments, corresponding to the answer of Jesus to the rich young man. Do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud, honor your father and your mother. The gravity of sins is more or less great. Murder is greater than theft. One must take into account who is wronged. Violence against parents is in itself graver than violence against a stranger. The following two requirements for mortal sin are dealt with in the following article, which reads, Mortal sin requires full knowledge and complete consent. It presupposes knowledge of the sinful character of the act, of its opposition to God's law. It also implies a consent sufficiently deliberate to be a personal choice. Feigned ignorance and hardness of heart do not diminish, but rather increase the voluntary character of a sin. The Catechism remarks that unintentional ignorance, passion, or external pressures, or pathological disorders might mitigate or remove the effects of the grave sin for the sinner, but even so, it is impossible to be ignorant of the principles of the moral law. Anyone who has committed a mortal sin is forbidden from receiving the Eucharist, and any priest who has committed mortal sin should not celebrate the Mass. St. Paul writes about this in the New Testament scriptures when he says, Whoever therefore eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of profaning the body and blood of the Lord. Let a man examine himself, and so eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For anyone who eats and drinks without discerning the body eats and drinks judgment upon himself. The Eucharist is the source and summit of Christianity, and we should be careful about assuming we can adequately receive it. In addition to stopping us from receiving communion, mortal sin causes exclusion from God's kingdom and the eternal death of hell, for our freedom has the power to make choices forever with no turning back. But God will forgive even a mortal sin if the sinner truly seeks repentance in the sacrament of reconciliation. We should also be careful about even venial sin. Simply because venial sins are more common does not mean they have no effect on us or others around us. Venial sin weakens our relationship with God. As St. Augustine writes, While he is in the flesh, man cannot help but have at least some light sins. But do not despise these sins which we call light. If you take them for light when you weigh them, tremble when you count them. A number of light objects makes a great mass. A number of drops fills a river. A number of grains makes a heap. What then is our hope? Above all, confession. And we need to keep in mind that mortal sin is not a remote possibility which none of us could ever commit. While the big things like adultery or murder are grave matters, they're not the only grave matters. Missing Sunday Mass or using the Lord's name in vain also qualify, as do the rest of the commandments. As 1 Peter says, Be sober and watch, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, goeth about seeking whom he may devour. Resist, strong in faith, knowing that the same affliction befalls your brethren who are in the world.